Muted.
Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. Can everyone hear me okay? We have a slightly different setup today. You can chat in any questions or comments. Sounds good. Okay, great. So today we're going to go over two major topics. The first is we are going to demo the changes to the coaching module. So a couple weeks ago, we said that we decided as a group that we wanted to remove the step of needing to record a meeting before we record a coaching detail record. And so we have staged that development in our dev environment, and we'll demo that. And if everyone is okay with it, then we're going to go ahead and push that live on Monday. So what we're trying to do now, we know it's been sort of rapid fire changes in the system for the past many months. And what we're trying to do is slow down a little bit, and as we release new changes, we actually want to show them on this call, make sure we get any feedback, and then let you know exactly when those changes will be released. Those are for more major releases. We will continue doing small improvements throughout the week, in between sugar calls. But please let us know if you're ever not experiencing something that you think should be happening in sugar. We're hearing now that sometimes people feel like they should be getting a workflow email and maybe they didn't ever get it. Please let us know if that's happening. We have resolved quite a few little workflow issues that occurred when we switched from kind of having everything driven off of spending status now to these new spending actions, which is the what would you like to do available actions options. So we do believe all of those are resolved, but please let us know if something isn't working as you expect it to so that we can resolve that as quickly as possible. So first thing, we're going to go through the coaching changes and talk about that. And then after we finish up that topic, we are going to switch to reviewing Dashlets. Actually, on the screen here is an example dashboard. So we're going to go through how to create your own little dashlets on your sugar homepage, which is always accessible through the little cube at the top hand corner. Now, if you feel like you don't want to learn about dashlets yet, then you're more than welcome to sign off after we switch topics. But anybody who's interested, you can check out the dashlets. We will be putting up some support material on the support site on a step-by-step of creating your own dashlets probably early next week. So you won't miss anything, and we'll go over it again if you'd like to. So with that being said, you can see here that I am in a different sugar site. So this site is going to look a little different than yours. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come over and see you still have meetings in this instance, but now you will no longer be able to create coaching meetings. You will be able to use meetings for other things like outreach meetings, or if you want to track something, some partner meetings or other types of meetings related to systems building, you'll be able to track that in the meetings module. But you will no longer be able to put in coaching meetings because you'll be able to put all of that in the coaching details itself. So there was an email that was sent out to the full sugar user list with some quick step-by-step on how to record coaching without a meeting. And basically, we're just removing a whole step. So it should be a lot less work for you to be able to do that. So coaching details are accessible a couple different ways. The first way is you can actually just click on the module itself up in this nav bar, navigation bar. Or you can click on the more actions. If you're not seeing coaching details up here, you can always click on this little triangle, which always means there's a menu. And you can look down and find those coaching details. Now, if you want to create a new coaching detail, you can actually create one right from the coaching details module. Or the way that we recommend is you actually go into the account that for the child care site that is benefiting from the coaching services, and you can add a coaching detail record right from there. So in this case, just wanted to point out you can add, for any module, you can add reports. If you want to look at reports in a particular module, this is an example of a coaching summation by coach. Now, because I'm an admin user, I can see all the coaches in the whole system, and it looks like this month, as a system, we are working on 1,700 coaching hours, which is pretty impressive, gotta say. So you can actually put this together for your own council, just look at a particular program, or to look at your whole council or a particular coach, and we'll be walking through that a little bit. So if we click on this Create button, we can see now that there are a couple of things that are going to be required right off the bat. The first is going to be the requisition. So to find the requisition, I think we all know this now, you want to start typing in the program abbreviation of the account that is benefiting from the coaching service. In our case, we're going to use Build Child Care Test. And so we've got, we actually don't have a coaching requisition for Build Child Care. Let me see if we got ICT. So let's use Auraria Early Learning. Okay, so this is a real site, so I'm going to not save this record. But I can see here that for Auraria Early Learning Center, I can see I've got lots of different requisitions. Now, I don't ever want to be assigning a coaching record to QI dollars, because those are for our QI funds. I want to either put it to an internal coach or an external coaching. So in our case, I'll put it to rates to internal coaching. And then we want to type in the account, Auraria Early Learning. And that's going to, and actually I can see here there's a mismatch here. So I would actually type in AUR. There you go. Because Auraria Early Learning has this program abbreviation, so those are the requisitions I want to bring in. And then the default is going to be scheduled here. So scheduled is actually going to deduct from your coaching requisitions the total billable coaching hours. If you put something in draft, then it will not deduct an amount from the requisition. So you can use that if you'd like to when you're kind of in the planning stages. And then you want to select the QIP category. This is, you can only select one, so you want to select the primary QIP category. If you do significant work in more than one QIP category, then you actually may want to consider putting in 2 coaching detail records so that you can keep those distinct. The Office of Early Childhood is really interested in reporting at the level of the Colorado Shines categories, so that's why we want to keep those distinct from each other. So let's say maybe this is leadership management and admin. And then for the scope, I'm going to say this is for a specific classroom. And again, I'm going to use that AUR, and I'm going to find a classroom to associate it with. And if I want to have a coaching session that is benefiting more than one classroom, you can either create more than one coaching detail record for each classroom, or if it's sort of like a group training setting, then you can select multiple classrooms or full programs if you'd like to do that.
Sharon, this is Rebecca from ECPAC. Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Going back to the point that you just made, the Office of Early Childhood is wanting really specific coaching detail. Currently, our coaches are spending approximately 20 to 30 minutes per coaching log per classroom or teacher conversation. So I'm a little concerned about having them potentially enter 2 coaching logs per conversation if 2 topics were being discussed. Is there a way to select 2 categories?
There isn't right now because it does not allow you to have one-to-one reporting, so it makes it less meaningful if you say the QIP category is learning environment and leadership management, because if the whole coaching session is 2 hours, you don't know how much of that 2 hours was spent on either one of those categories, which is why you want to pick kind of that primary category. I'm wondering, is that as it relates to when they're doing the QRIS readiness assessment that they're spending 20 minutes in each classroom?
No, it's consistently every one of their visits, each classroom coaching log is taking approximately 20 to 30 minutes to enter. And that's the majority. The coaches that I've spoken with. I'm sorry?
I think I was asking, you're saying the duration of the coaching activity is 20 to 30 minutes, or it takes that long to enter it into Sugar?
It takes that long to enter it into Sugar.
Okay, so I think that's certainly not the intention. I think, you know, it should typically take about 5 minutes to record a coaching log, unless you want to take really a lot of notes. And in which case you can be taking those notes during the coaching session if you'd like to do that, which would make it not have sort of that overhead time.
Right, I understand that. The problem is that our programs don't have wireless internet, and so our coaches are having to write their logs on paper and then go back home or to a restaurant somewhere to then enter the logs, and they do take detailed notes. So it is consistently taking them 20 to 30 minutes to enter a log into Sugar. So ideally, there would be a way to add a field here to choose, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 categories with how much time spent on each one of those categories. So they're actually only having to do 1 log. And I understand that the OEC is needing the time spent on each topic, each category. But if there could be a way to add a field for time spent on per category, that would be the ideal.
So that may be a possibility, and the other possibility is that when you save a record, you can actually duplicate that record and then just make changes. Oh, and actually Kelly Bose just chatted that in as well. So you can save this record and then you can make a copy and just make changes for what that particular coaching session was. Do you know if that's something that they've done?
Yes, they actually do that. Yeah, they do that. The challenge is that it's the detail that takes the most time.
Sure.
It's not the date and the location and whatever. Those things can take minutes, moments.
Right.
It's the detailed portion that is taking the most amount of time.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a really good bit of feedback. Are other people also experiencing this this kind of problem where it's taking longer to enter the coaching information than like the actual coaching activity is taking? And just because people aren't chatting doesn't mean they're not having the same problem. So maybe what we can do is we can see what the effort would be to kind of create the ability to say, on this category, I spent this much time on this category. So that means we would need to add 6 fields for how much time you spend on each of these QIP categories. Or we could create some business rules, like if it's a QRIS readiness assessment, we know we're going to hit all of these topics, so then we want to put that to leadership management and admin. So, you know, like we might be able to kind of come up with some rules. It looks like my chat isn't working very well. Can you pull up Stacey's chat? Stacey Petty just chatted in and see what that says.
Yes, Stacey says, I take my laptop, type in my notes, and then copy and paste the appropriate information in the notes section, which cuts down on her time.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some tricks maybe to streamlining the process. So even if you don't have Wi-Fi, you can maybe take notes on a tablet in a Word document or something, and then copy that into your coaching log so that you're not having to take notes on paper and then move that. I know for Denver Council, we actually allow all of our coaches to receive a special cell phone reimbursement so that they can add Wi-Fi capability to their own personal phone, which has worked really well. But even I know sometimes there's still service issues, like if you're in a basement or something, that can be challenging. So, you know, that is an issue. But I think if you want to think about QIP category as the primary category, and that, you know, if it's under an hour, I don't know that we necessarily capture the destinations. A lot of effort to capture a little bit of information. I take a note.
Yep, and then Angie says that their coaches complete a coaching form and then upload the form into the coaching record.
Oh, interesting. And then they don't fill in notes?
I'm assuming, if Angie, if you could chat, and then they don't complete the notes, they just utilize an attachment.
Because it is, they say something.
Like they say see attached, but they don't then.
Okay. So the one thing is that the provider next step does populate the QIP dashboard, so that's really helpful for a coach to actually fill out if it applies. And then description, of course, is required because funders may be looking at that description. So I know from a multi-select perspective, you can do coaching subtypes here. So if you said the primary is leadership management and admin, and then secondarily they talked about learning environment and family partnerships, that might be a way you're still capturing the information, but you're not having to put in so many coaching detail records. Would that work for the particular circumstances, do you feel like?
I believe so. I just don't know that that meets the Office of Early Childhood's needs.
Yeah,
if they're needing to know how much time was spent in each subtype or category, that's not going to tell them.
Yeah, so in the OEC reports, they would see the primary category and they also see the subtypes. So they wouldn't know, oh, I spent 2 minutes on learning environment and 10 minutes in family partnership. But we can have that conversation with the data analysts at OEC and see if that's, like, what level do we want to distinguish that at. And still make sure that the administrative burden is not too heavy. Because I think it's always a balancing act.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. Thanks. Great question. All right. Then, of course, you put your start date and end date, prep follow-up time. Again, default to 0.25, which is 15 minutes, but you can actually zero that out if you'd like to. Total billable hours will calculate based on how you filled out the rest of the form. Most of the time, most of our councils, you know, we have coach personnel included in the grant, so you select that. But sometimes we have billable to funder because it's a contracted coach and they can actually type in their rate here. And that is going to allow deduct from the requisition. When the requisition type is external coaching, you have a coaching rate. Let's say that coaching rate is $100, but this coach is only charging $50. It's only going to deduct $50 an hour, even though you have $100 budgeted. So that's why we kind of have that on each coaching record. Or you can actually fee-for-service bill directly to a provider. I don't think many of us will be doing that this year because there's so many coaching resources available, but that is an option. And of course, you can put in the coaching type and coaching subtype, which are a multi-select. So I can just go in here and say, oh, it's all these different coaching subtypes. So you're still capturing the information about the detail of what it is that you're working on with the site. All right. Any questions? Oh, I guess the assessment is going to continue to be required. And we have had some people use this a little differently. So just to clarify, you use assessment in progress if you are working on an assessment but cannot finish it within one coaching session. And then what you want to do is the final coaching session, like let's say it took you 2.5 hours to do a QRES readiness assessment. You did 1 hour on one day, you put that as assessment in progress. And then the next day you came back and you did 1.5 hours. That's where you would put in the QRES readiness assessment guide. And you would put in all the cut scores and the grade level goal and all that information in here. And it works the same way for observations. So are there any questions on that? I think that's mostly gotten resolved at this point. Okay, great. And just so that you know, DPP Needs Assessment is something that is for the Denver Preschool Program, for Denver Early Childhood Council. and you do not need to use that. This is a good example, though. If you, at your council, if you have a custom assessment that you want to be able to track, then just let us know, and we can add that in here, and we can even add additional fields and things like that. You just need to let us know, and we can work on that with you. Great. So for most of the time, this should be not applicable. All right, and then you just hit save, and you're done. So the coaching detail would be recorded. So it really is very much the same as it was under our old model. It's just that we don't have to tie that meeting to the record. So now instead of it saying meeting and you linking it to the meeting, you're linking it directly to the account. So that's the big difference. Are there any questions on that?
Is this the only way to input the QRS assessment? Sorry. Is this the only way to input the QRS assessment?
Yes, this is the only way to input the QRS assessment and have it included in reporting for the Office of Early Childhood. Are there any other questions?
What if our coaches don't know the abbreviation code for the program?
So great, and actually I just gave an example of that because I didn't know the code for Auraria Early Learning. So, so what you do is you actually in the accounts you just start typing your account. Maybe it's ABC Childcare, whoever the account is, and it will actually pull it in right here for you, and then you can update the requisition up here. So we could actually, maybe when we actually release this, we'll scooch the account and program abbreviation up and put the requisition right below. And that way you're always entering the account first, seeing the program abbreviation, and then entering the requisition. Does that sound like a good change for everyone? Okay, great.
Can you demo how to enter the details from the account page?
Absolutely. So I'm going to cancel out of that one because, again, that was a real childcare site. So from here, does anyone have a coaching record they want to enter together? If not, that's okay. So I just went to build childcare test. So you can go to accounts and look it up there, or I can say build childcare test over here, and it will pop up here. I can even type in the license number here, and it will pop up as well. So this search is basically like a little Google inside of Sugar. So here, come down to the coaching details. Got a lot of coaching meetings. And you just find the coaching detail subpanel. Coaching detail subpanel on the account?
Yes.
Okay. There it is. Our developer is in the room, and I just asked him if it was actually here. So it is. Okay, so we're going to come here to coaching details. Now this list view, since this is still in the staging environment, I have not modified this yet to have useful information. So what we'll probably do is we'll include the name, but we'll also include the status and the start date and things like that, so that it's more useful than date modified and name. That's just the default list view that shows up when we add a subpanel in Sugar. So again, if you ever have a view that you would like to see some extra fields in these list views, you can submit a request to support and we can see if we can accommodate that. Sometimes people have conflicting wants in terms of the list views, so we just have to balance that for everyone. So you come to this coaching details and you can actually hit create from here. And so the really cool thing is if you go to the account first, it's going to populate your account and your program abbreviation for you. So then I can actually just come in here and say bill for the requisition, and that's a bad one because it's $2. And then kind of fill it out from there and hit save. So Karina just said, sorry for all the questions, but I don't see coaching details under accounts. And that's because this is in the staging environment. So this is not released to our regular sugar.echocolorado.org website, because we are really working hard to be more planful and show you the changes before we release the changes live in Sugar, because we've gotten some feedback that some people don't like having fields move around on them or modules change without knowing. So, we're kind of trying to take a step back, and now that development should be winding down a little bit, we can take the little extra time to show you first and let you know, hey, we're going to release this on Monday, so you can expect to see this on Monday. Are there any other questions related to that? So you can see this web address is not your regular website. This is a different one.
I have another question. When we are selecting our requisitions there, is there any way that, one, it could be limited to only seeing the coaching options so that we don't mischoose dollars? And two, is there any way within that you could actually see how many hours are left, if that's something you're concerned about using? Because in our case, we've got programs who have potentially 4 choices. Mm-hmm. And so I can say I would prefer that you run them down in this order, but when they can't tell what the dollars are left, mm-hmm. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, so that is an improvement that we have wanted to do that for years. Yeah. And what it does is in order to limit the options and that select, Sugar doesn't have a great way of doing that. But we were actually just talking about, as a potential improvement, is having coaches actually enter information through EC Connect, where we have a lot more control over what a coach would be able to see. And so they would be able to see all the information about how many coaching hours they have, and what funding streams. And we could actually, just like on a spending request through EC Connect, we can limit the options that you have. So on a spending request in EC Connect, it would only be classrooms related to that site. In our case, it shows all the classrooms. So that's the kind of thing that we want Sugar Advisory Group to really take on is, we've gotten the system to a certain basic foundational level of working order, and we know that we want to make improvements, but we need to prioritize those improvements and kind of put them into a plan and make sure that, in our case, Office of Early Childhood is picking up the bill for some of these improvements, or we might have private funders pick up the bill for other improvements. And so, we want to organize.
Create a plan and know what to do.
Exactly. Create a plan, know what we're doing. So absolutely, that's something we know is an issue. Our workaround for now is that you've got the program abbreviation, and it very clearly says dollars versus coaching. So we're trying to kind of distinguish from that perspective. But we do know that that's an issue, and we'd love to brainstorm about that more.
I'll try to keep the brainstorm out of this meeting.
Awesome. Are there any other questions here? So the other thing is, I don't know that we've added it yet on our dev environment, but I do believe we can add coaching details as a quick create. So just like you can log communication from quick create, you can add, and you can schedule a meeting from quick create. We can most likely add a little plus button here that says create coaching details, so it's even faster. So you could come right in and do it like that. So we'll have a couple of different ways that you can enter it, and it's really your preference. Like we said, we kind of recommend going to the account. And if you go to the account first, that's another thing you can look at requisitions here and see exactly how much money or hours you have before you do that. All right, any other questions? So just to reiterate, we'll be putting this live on Monday, probably Monday afternoon. So you can expect to see that change. If your coaches are called, please try and communicate this change to them. I think we're actually going to hide the meetings module for a couple weeks just to get people out of the habit of going to the meetings. And then we'll bring that back once they're kind of seeing that trend occur. We will send out an email to the Sugar user list as soon as it actually is live, just to let you know. So any other thoughts on coaching before we move on to Dashlist? So actually, before we move on to Dashlist, we wanted to bring up one topic that came up. We are so pleased to actually have some special guests from Arapahoe County here at the ARPA offices. And so we were talking with Arapahoe about customizing their approval workflows so it really makes sense to their council, and even kind of looking at the diagrams here and making some customizations on the business process diagram. And one thing that came up is on Easy Connect, there is currently a spending, there's sort of a limitation when you go to submit a QI request form. You submit up to $10 over your request amount. So if you've got $300 in your race to the top requisition, you can only submit $309.99. Otherwise, it won't let you submit that. And so they were interested in having a quick discussion to see, do we want to, as a group of councils, increase that to $50 or $100 so that it just allows, it doesn't kind of stop the process, doesn't have providers get stuck or coaches get stuck or navigators get stuck. What will happen is if a provider or coach or whomever submits a QI request and it is does make that requisition go negative, then the program manager and the QI navigator will receive an email saying that they have a negative requisition at exactly the same moment that QI request confirmation comes in. So, so you would know that something is negative before it goes through the pre-approval, before it gets to order, all of that. So you could prevent it after the fact. So there's you know, sort of, do we want the budget control before the submission process or after the submission process? So I don't know if Arapahoe wants to add anything to that. You'd have to speak very.
I think with our council, you know, it became more of, I'm Katie, by the way. Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting us be a part of this. It became obvious that, you know, there was never a dollar amount that was round. And it was really just frustrating to coaches who wanted to order specific items, and they got to a point where they've sat with their provider, gone through the entire process, and then were stuck because they couldn't move forward because they had overspent by, we actually had an example that was 80 cents. So in that case, you know, we had to go do a dollar transfer, which, you know, if we had known ahead of time, we could have done that, but, you know, then that creates a lot more work and a lot more people involved. So we're lucky enough at our council to have somewhat of, you know, some things in our discretionary funds for each funding source. So why not, you know, instead of just verbally saying, sure, that's fine, why not make it a process where you don't get to the point where we're stuck and then have to add 3 other people into that and do those transfers and such that way. Why not make it official that it's okay if you want that really cool rocking chair, you can get it even though it's 80 cents over. So we're really excited to see if this process will help us down the road.
Great. Does anyone have any comments, want to chime in on the conversation? Say like, no, don't let providers put any penny over, or yes, please, we've been really wanting to see that. I think from the Denver Council perspective, we'd love to see this increase to $100 because it just makes it a little less banging your head against the wall when you're trying to get something submitted. But, you know, we're opening this up for conversation.
So this is Lisa, so I'm going to speak up on this one again. Our council actually is experiencing that they can't go a penny over.
Yeah, we just realized our developer had a miscommunication thinking it was supposed to be $0 and it was supposed to be $10. So.
And it sort of almost doesn't matter whether it's the penny or the $10. I'm probably a little concerned in our case going as high as 100 on one of my funding streams. The other funding streams, it probably would be fine, but one, if we did that, would cause me problems. I don't know what the happy medium is. The way that we have been dealing with any orders that are over their amount is to have it saved as a draft because it can sit there, and then we can have a conversation and we can do the transfer, and then it can get submitted. So that's the way that we're doing the approval, but it does require that transfer then, and I think you have to do a transfer even if you're going over anyway. So you're going to do that same action. I don't know what's the best thing, so I think other people need to speak up.
We have a tie right now.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts?
Or you're not there yet.
Yeah, maybe you're not worried about it yet. Well, I think the other piece, just to piggyback on that, like it might cause you some trouble. The idea is that it would only allow it to go to the received request stage. And so then before it actually goes into the pre-approval, you could actually decrease it in sugar, or you could pop it back to draft. You've got options. So you can kind of decide how you want to deal with that. It's so interesting looking at the comments come through because they're like completely opposite.
So now we still tie.
So
Sharon, this is Rebecca from XPAC. I am going to concur with what Lisa Sauter is saying and add to that one of the biggest goals of, at least for XPAC, is to support our programs in sustainability. A program's budget does not have a cushion of $100 or $10 or 80 cents sometimes. And so we are trying to work with them to learn how to budget their spending for materials. And if we are giving them a cushion of, say, $100 just because we happen to have it, is not helping them with their sustainability practices.
Well, that is a
just
really
putting that out there.
Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead. Sorry about that. I think I interrupted your last thought on that. But that is a really nice perspective when you're thinking about kind of building the capacity of the provider to understand kind of what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I think, a $10 overage is kind of nice because it's sort of like, if it's a few pennies, if it's a few bucks, it's not going to like break down the whole process you've got going on. But if it's more than that, then you can do the transfer if you need to. And the other thing is you can leave it in draft, and then as a navigator or a coach or whomever, you can go in here and you can select to move it to received request. So you don't even have to do it through Easy Connect. There are a couple of little ways around that.
That's what I do.
That's what Lisa does, she says. So as an example, here's a draft status. And so in here, I can actually come in and say update status to received request. So what that's going to do is it's going to, anything that's in draft status is not going to deduct any money from the requisition. So you want to be careful about leaving stuff in draft because that means that provider might think they have more money than they actually have. So you might want to, on your side, move it to received request even if they don't have all the documentation attached yet, or you're waiting on something, or you're going to add something later. That's totally your choice. So you can decide and control that process, or you can just wait for them to submit it. So it's kind of up to you. Right, any questions or comments on that? So I think maybe we'll continue with the status quo for right now, which is $10. Maybe what we'll do is we'll post a topic on the support site and see if people want to chime in and start a conversation. And we're trying to make sure that we are doing this very democratically. So
So one of the things about that, Sharon, would be as we get closer to the end of the year, and we really are getting tighter on funds, and so I don't know if we would lock that down more if we went high, or would we just continue the same process and remove items or something to process. I don't know. You guys have more experience than we do, so maybe sharing how you handle that at some point would be helpful.
Well, I know sometimes, like, we still see providers forfeit dollars sometimes.
Right, which you don't want either.
Yeah, and so what will happen is very quickly we need to say, oh, this site is forfeiting $500, and this site really needs that crib, and so we want to give that $500 to this site. So I think, you know, you want to maintain the same level of flexibility even as you go into year end. But always remember, you know, whenever a requisition goes negative, that program manager and that QI navigator are receiving an email. So don't just ignore those, you know. It's not necessarily bad if a requisition goes negative, but it means that something is going on where you need to reassign funds, or you need to go back and remove an item, or something needs to happen so that that goes back to zero. So, you know, it's easy to just sort of ignore those, but you want to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, especially as we approach fourth quarter and that kind of thing. I guess that kind of segues into, we will be working on some improvements to the requisitions and transfers process, where just like in spending, how we have these actions, available actions, we are going to develop a series of actions on the requisition so that you don't have to go to the transfer module to do certain activities. So an example would be, you know, my coaching requisition is -10 hours, and I know I want to support that site with those coaching hours, so I just want to simply transfer enough coaching hours to make that requisition zero. So that would be a type of action, and as long as you had available coaching hours in your discretionary pools requisition, then that transfer would go through. So really kind of making the requisition a control panel for you so that you can kind of direct things all from that one record. And you can also do mass updates. So if you want, at the end of the year, let's say, after the April 30th spending deadline or April 16th, whatever your deadline is for your council, you want to say anybody who hasn't spent their money, all of that is forfeited. And you want to put that all back to the pooled requisition. We will have an action on the requisition that says forfeit all remaining balance. And that will move all of that money up into the pooled requisition so that you can figure out how do you want to reallocate those funds for year end. So that's just a preview of what will be coming soon. We'll probably be giving some updates on that in about 2 weeks. And we won't just make that change again. We're going to show you sort of a mock-up of that and demo that and get your feedback, make sure we're thinking about all the actions that we want to have for that process. So just sort of what's coming next. All right, any questions, comments on requisition, spending, or coaching?
Stacey just mentioned that even if you increase the leeway to $100, you wouldn't necessarily have to inform the providers that it was that high.
No.
Level.
Yeah.
They don't want to tell them.
Yeah.
That's probably the thing I was probably most worried about.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't know.
Right.
They would.
Unconsciously, that's what they were saying. And then Karina is just mentioning, as the only approver for her council, she would prefer not it to be too high, as that feels like extra work to verify budgets. Holly is still gone from Mesa on maternity leave, therefore it seems that it'll keep the efficiency for her if there's not dealing with reviewing budgeting. So keep it a smaller amount.
Okay, great. So like I said, for now we'll keep it at the status quo of $10. It was $0 for about a week, but now it's back to $10. So we will post a topic on the support site. So if you're really passionate about this and want to try and persuade other councils to think about it differently, then you are welcome to post there. And we'll see how that goes, because we've never tried that before. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to the next topic, which is dashboards. This is my sort of admin view of dashboards, and I created a QI dashboard that has some fun graphs and what needs pre-approval, and things like that. But I actually, and this is really nice, this shows all the coaching hours by coach, by a particular funding stream. Now I'm seeing this for all councils because of my admin view, but we actually created a little demo that is as if we are a test QI navigator. So we're going to pretend like we're a real QI navigator, the sort of more limited view of only our council, which is the test, which is Dustin, our programmer. And we can kind of show you what that looks like. So this is a little trick in case you didn't know. If you ever want to log into more than one thing and with different usernames, you can use Google Chrome as incognito. So you can come over and say new incognito window, and that way I can be logged in as myself over here, and I'm logged in as a test person over here. Just in case you ever want to do something like that. I'm sure I learned that from our developers. But okay, so when you log in, the first thing you're going to see is your homepage dashboard. And so for a long time, the dashboard has looked not very interesting because it says stuff like sales pipeline and sales forecasting, because Sugar is a sales customer relation management system at its core. But you can actually customize this to include all kinds of information that is useful to you. And so in my very limited view, I'm not seeing a whole lot of information here because I don't have a lot of requests yet. But when I have a received request that comes in, it will actually show up in this little report, and I can click on that spending record and go right to it. So so I can see kind of at a glance all the different spending information. Now this, we created recently spending groups by status for all funding streams. So you can actually grab those reports and put them in as a little graph on your home page. So when we look over here, it will look more like this when you have a lot of activity in those different areas. So the year-to-date reconciled spending by funding stream graph, this is for the Denver Early Childhood Council, and I can see how much we've spent on workforce and professional development versus leadership and management versus child health. I can see that very quickly at a glance. And there are a lot of possibilities with Dashlets, and you can go kind of nuts with Dashlets, or you could never use Dashlets. It's totally a preference thing whether or not you want to do that. So what we're working on is actually a little write-up of a step-by-step how to create Dashlets. We thought we'd demo that really quickly today. And what we'll also do is we'll send out some YouTube videos that are actually put out by Sugar consultants across the nation that kind of have like how to do Dashlets in cool ways. So we can share those resources. So right now I've just created this QI Navigator spending dashboard. And if I wanted to edit it, I can come in and say edit. And I actually change completely the layout. I can make it a 3-column layout. I can make it a 1-column layout. It's just like your own little website, however you want to display your information. I kind of messed it up, but that's okay. So then you can drag and drop your report however you'd like to. And you can see all of your list views however you want to position them. Let me cancel that because I just totally but then if you want to add a new type of report, what you would do is you scroll down to the bottom where it says add row, and you click on add row, and then you click on add a dashlet. And that's going to bring up this little menu. And I'd really encourage you to spend a little bit of time and kind of play around in here. There's a lot of cool stuff. You can actually even put in an organization chart if you actually filled out your profile, your user records of who your report to is. It will actually kind of like throw that up for you if you want. For planned activities, this is any meeting you have scheduled or any call you have scheduled or any calls that you recently did. That will just throw it all up for you into that dashboard. But the two that I would really encourage you to look at the most are the Sage Reports Chart Dashlet, and that's going to allow you to really display graphs and charts and things like that, and this list view. So we're going to demo the list view. And list view is the most flexible. It can show you any field pretty much in any module. So it's going to default you to the communications module just because that's at the top of the list. But you can create a list view of anything that you'd like to look at. So in our case, if we want to look at spending, and it's going to show us some of the fields we have. And let's say we want to say, my spending in received requests. Actually, let's even do draft. That's a good one. So we're going to keep status in there. Requisition account is going to be your provider. Invoice date is not going to be on a draft because you don't have an invoice date on a draft. So we're going to get rid of that one. Payable to account, that means who your vendor is. Total request amount. Invoice number, we don't really need on here. Assigned to, we don't need because we're only looking at yours. So you don't need to see whose it is. Now, if you're a program manager and you want to see all your navigator drafts, you could actually leave assigned to on there, and then you can filter that how you'd like to. Payment status, date modified, we don't need any of that. Date created is pretty interesting. Requisition you don't need because that's included in the name. Payable to type may or may not be something that you want to include, and teams you definitely don't need because you're only going to see your own team. And you can pick how many rows you want to display. Maybe we say 10. And for auto refresh, I usually like doing every 1 minute, but those less compulsive than me might want to do every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But you know, if you want to see the actual data, you might want to say every 1 minute. And then what it's doing down here is it's kind of auto-filtered on my spending. And what my spending means, every single type of spending that's assigned to me. So as a QI navigator, all the spending records are assigned to me for my site. So you could just look at every single status of spending, but that probably will be too much information. So we're going to take that filter off by clicking this X button. If we wanted to just edit it, then you can actually click this edit you can edit it by clicking on it. So you can do that. And then what it will do is it will show you a whole bunch of fields that you can choose from that will actually help you filter and refine what the results are of this report that you're showing in your dashboard. So in this case, we're saying this is my spending draft. So I want to say is any of, and I want to say draft as the status. And then this little add and minus, this allows you to add or remove filters so that you can continue to add additional things that will help refine the results of your search. So in this case, I want to say assigned to. And I'm going to say is, I'm going to say test navigator, because that's who I am logged in as. Now, if I wanted to filter even more, I could even add one for funding streams. Oops, and I actually need to add that to this view, which brings up a good point. If you are ever not seeing a field that you want to be able to filter on, this is exactly the same list that's in your regular list view on your regular module. If you're not seeing a field that you want to be able to search on, let us know, because usually that's something that's really easy for us to add. And if it's not easy for us to add, we'll let you know and try and figure out if there's a way to do that for you. Okay, so you will be able to filter by funding stream as well once I add that to the view. Now down here, you can enter a new filter name, and in my case, I'm going to say my spending draft. And when I hit save, two things are going to happen. First, I'm going to have my spending draft dashlet added here. But then also, if I go over into the spending module, I have a new filter that I can use called My Spending Draft. So you can actually save your filter type, and then that way, if you've got something that you're really often looking at, then you can see them here, which is really helpful. Or my favorite thing to do is just kind of leave it on create. Oops, I think my let me look at this. You can save those filters, and that way you can kind of re-reference them, or you can kind of leave it on create, and that way you're very flexible. I'm not sure why we just got locked out. Okay, so now, like what we were just saying is if you leave it on create, then you can create whatever filter you want at any time. And what's nice is that Sugar is always going to remember what filter you had on when you kind of navigate away and then navigate back. Okay, great. So are there any questions on that? Okay, so I'm going to change one of these to assign to my test navigator. And it might change it back because of the requisition, but I will. Just so that we can see an example. Pop in. Oh, okay. So actually, this is a good thing. You guys might have noticed that if you try to change the assigned to directly on a spending record, it's going to convert it back to who it was, and that's because the assigned to is slowing down from the requisition. So if I go to my requisition, I'm going to see that bill is assigned to this requisition, and that this is a QI dollars requisition. And so I know that's set based on who's the QI navigator on Bill's child care test. So if I come down here, I'd expect to see that Bill is the navigator. So I'm going to actually change this to test navigator. Hit save. And then what I would expect to see is if I go down to my requisition, then I should see that that assigned to will update, and it did. Phew. So the test navigator is now the assigned to here, and then when I go into the spending draft, I should also see that the assigned to will be updated to test navigator and will save. So it won't revert it back to Bill. All right. So that kind of allows you to either keep the ones with the old QI navigator or to convert it to the new QI navigator. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my dashboard by clicking on the little box, and there I see my draft. So it just kind of helps you capture all the information very quickly on kind of what you're looking at. So actually, so you can kind of play around with these dashlets. We are actually out of time at this point, but we will be posting some additional information just to show you kind of a more full-looking dashboard. There are a lot of great graphs that you can check out. I started labeling some of the reports as the name and then parentheses dashlet. So if you're ever looking for those, you can go into reports and do %sign dashlet, and those will pop up, and you can kind of check those out. You can also show, easy stuff like my favorite reports. You can kind of show a list of my favorite reports and things like that. So there's a lot of possibilities. We'll continue revisiting that, but if anyone has any final questions before we wrap up, we are just about out of time and actually have another meeting on the horizon. Any questions or comments? Okay, great. Happy Friday. Hope everyone has a good weekend.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thanks so